Thanks. Just because they don't get to see anything. So.
I have so many questions that I don't know where to start. But I will try.
Okay.
Well, I think it's a beautiful screening. Oh, sorry. It's the first time I also see the film in the big screen, so it was also like a beautiful experience to me. And I wanna start asking you, well, again, like welcome again, Gustavo Vinagre, and I wanna start asking you about how was the idea, how was the original idea, and how that probably changed during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. So how you were able to adapt the script, the original script, to the changing situation in Brazil at that point.
Okay, I mostly do independent films with the help of friends that usually work with me, with no money, and eventually when we win some kind of award, then we split the money, something like that. So this, the first thing that came to my mind was like the three main characters. And the first script was written in 2016, and it was a much smaller film. It was just about like these three characters that they never met in the film. Like this girl who was studying to get into college and her day in town, and this other guy who was suffering for the loss of his boyfriend, and he would be like putting his artwork throughout the city. And this other guy who was HIV positive and was in town for a day. And they only met like in the end of the film for a party, something like that. And that was 2016 when a coup happened in Brazil, and I think I was like very disappointed politically with the country, and I thought that, I don't know, I think some of that came to the characters. And then a funding was opened, and then I decided to try to get some money to do the film. And so I made the script bigger because we had like to have a minimum of pages. So then the film changed a lot and became a musical, entire musical. And it had much more characters, but I wasn't happy with it. Anyway, I just was like filling pages to get the funding. And then we got the funding, and then it came the pandemics, and it was horrible because we were trying to get more deadline to make the film, but Ancine, which is like the cinema agency in Brazil, they were frozen by Bolsonaro, and they didn't even like answer our emails, and because we wanted to be safe and to get the vaccine before start doing the film. And time went by and they never answer, and they never gave us more money to have like the safety protocols. So then I had to rewrite the film again to make it smaller so we could pay for the safety protocols that we had to have. So we waited as long as we could, and 1 month, I think, before having to deliver the film, we decided we have to make the film, and then we made a film. And then luckily, everybody just started vaccinating, and by the end of the shooting, everybody was vaccinated. So I decided to make it smaller, so many of the characters went away, but I think I couldn't do a film that wasn't in the pandemics. If I was shooting in the pandemic, to me, it didn't make sense to make a film like it would be or a futuristic film or maybe a film about the past. And I just wanted, to shoot in the streets, and the pandemic would be obvious because people were like just going around. And yeah, that's it, I think.
I have another question related to the actors. You were working in this case. Most of them were professional actors, so you were like working with young actors. How was the casting and the process of?
Well, many of them worked with me in other films, like mostly like the older actors. And the three main actors, I knew that I wanted them to look very young. And basically, we did a large research on Instagram, like just seeing people that I could relate with. And also I wanted them to be actors. So the two boys, they are like finishing acting school. And the girl, it was harder because she's a transgender girl, and in Brazil it's really hard to have like education being a trans person, so she had no experience as an actress. And yeah, that was harder to find, but yeah. And then we like would approach people on Instagram and then make like an interview with them and then ask them to send a scene, and that's how we picked them. Yeah.
Well, this is a film about memory. I think also most of your work, for those of you also who had the chance of like watching all the films before, is pretty much related to questions of memory, identity, and of course like queer archive, I would say. So I'm particularly interested in how do you approach memory in this case? So I don't know if the question is thinking about it.
I don't know. I think it was naturally. It naturally came to the film. It wasn't a film about that. It wasn't a film about a virus, and it became a film about a virus. And then I wanted to have the pandemics, but I didn't want to be exactly the same pandemic. So it's a very similar pandemic, but it has this extra symptom. And then I think it naturally came, like we were shooting in the streets of São Paulo, and São Paulo is like a city that was built under a lot of violence, this really violent colonization. And I think it just naturally came to the film, like I live next to the Japanese neighborhood, which is Liberdade, which actually was like a black neighborhood before, and I always went by through those streets, and I think that the geography of the place itself like gave all those things, brought those things to the film, like the church they visit, or the river itself, like that we see in the end, like which is a big river in São Paulo, which is like totally rotten. And yeah, and all this, I mean, São Paulo has like kilometers of rivers, and we don't see the rivers because of the way it was built. The rivers are all under the streets, and that's, to me, is like pretty violent also, like the way it was colonized to just like control nature in a really bizarre way and let everything underground. I don't know if I'm answering the question. I'm just like talking and talking. Yeah, and I think when in the pandemic we were like just having like this stream information like coming from everywhere, and like alone in our houses and watching things all the time. All we could do was like watch, and there was some kind of forgetting in that, in a way, you know, like this over information. Yeah, I don't know. I need to think more about it.
Yeah, I think like it's actually raising this awareness of like not forgetting. Mm-hmm. that's why I was insisting on this idea of queer archive, thinking about the future, not only about the past. So like this ethical approach to how important it is for like vulnerable life, like queer people, for instance, queer subjects, to always remember that we need to remember indeed. So I think this is one of the most beautiful, perhaps like threads or concepts that we could easily feel in this movie, in this film. And for me, it's interesting how you're able to connect that also with these queer ecologies, and perhaps at the same time to build what I could define as a sort of like queer temporality, where they are able to connect to mix living objects with like dead objects or humans. So I find this like as a beautiful sort of like queer utopia as well, as a possibility of encounter that is not perhaps pretty much possible in the world we are living in right now. So I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I think the film also tries to think about the value of things in a different way that we usually think about it. And I think I learned that a lot in Cuba. Yeah, because I'm Brazilian and I studied in Cuba for 3 years, and it amazed me how, I mean, there is this lack of materials, and people, they never throw anything away because they need it, because they can get anything new, so they try to fix it, and if they can fix it, they probably find like a different use for that object. And that to me was like really beautiful in a way, you know, just to like have respect for all things that are in the world, because they are not like forever. They can end. And what was it?
The insisting upon like memory containing objects as well.
Yeah, and I actually wanted to talk about the HIV also. Like, to me, it was really important to have a character that was living with HIV, but that wasn't like in the past, because we are used to seeing films that are like in the 80s about the beginning of the epidemic and people dying, and it's all about this historicized look to the disease. And I really wanted to show a young person living with HIV and not also coming out of the closet like to the family, or finding out she's positive, because that's also what we are used to seeing, like, oh, now what do I do in my life? I have HIV. I just wanted to show a person living with HIV in another specific time of their relation with the disease. Like in this case, finding out he is intransmissible, which is a thing also that we don't talk about. Like, I think the media in the 80s created like this huge stigma and monster. And I just, to me, it was really important to be really informational about this. Like, that if you are treated, you can get like this level of viruses really low, and you won't transmit the disease. And to me, that is a fact that is still not well known for everybody in the world. Maybe inside the LGBTQ community, but there are lots of misinformation about that. And I think that should be like a huge news when it came out, like when they found this thing, like that was possible. That should be in the news all over the world to try to compensate the mess that was done in the 80s. So So the film sometimes is even kind of unreal, dealing with HIV, the way they talk, like they are really natural, but that was me trying to really approach in another way the disease. So you want to talk more about objects? Okay. Well, not everything I know about the film. I'm still learning also. Much of it is really just intuitive. But yeah, I just wanted to change the hierarchy of the importance of humans in that place. You know, I think when they get to the shop, the thrift shop, or whatever it is, I think it's a place where things change for them. Like the three of them get what they want in a way, and then they find out if what they want is really what they wanted. Like the girl, she kind of becomes like the administrator she wanted to be, and the boy becomes a baby, and I think they are like dealing in that space with their conflicts in some kind of other level and finding out things there, and yeah, and also with the objects, I just wanted to change a little bit the hierarchy of human and object.
Well, now I have a little bit of provocation. So, usually when we talk about queer cinema, I mean, for instance, in Brazil, we could immediately like think about Carina Inus and other filmmakers who have been like working on that topic for quite a long time at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But I wonder what you will think is different in your approach, or what kind of differences perhaps you could find in other filmmakers who are like working right now with like queer archive or queer memories or queer activities in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think Brazil was going like to a great phase because we were having lots of funding for filmmakers that were starting. Not only like the big filmmakers, there were like specific funding for people who were starting, specific funding for each region of the country, so that helped us to decentralize the cinema from São Paulo and Rio. So for the first time in history, we were starting to see films of other regions, like Northeast, which is like a really important region in Brazil, but it always had this look from the outside, from the south. People would go there and make film about that exotic place. And now we started seeing like films made by people that live in favelas. Like nobody was telling their stories anymore. Like transgender filmmakers, and like there was this intent to make cinema less elitist, you know, less white. It was like clearly a project that was like frozen with Bolsonaro, and now I think we're seeing like the rest. Like this film was like the last funding that was like open. I mean, the money is there, but it's frozen and we cannot access it. And I think for some years now we're gonna have a wider and more cisgender and more reach and more in the South cinema. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you were talking about Bolsonaro. I want to ask you more specifically about how the situation with like filmmakers right now, especially during Bolsonaro's era,
Mm-hmm.
and Also, you just won Teddy Award at Berlinale, so I wonder how will be the trajectory of your film in Brazil?
Well, Bolsonaro always tries to use culture as to disguise his other horrible acts. So he always comes to us to say, "Oh my God, those faggots making cinema," or "Oh my God, they only make films about prostitutes," or things like that. But actually, there's no kind of persecution, because that's the sad part. Because it's really hard to distribute in Brazil. So people don't go to cinema because it's really expensive, and usually they are like, all cinema rooms are filled with American films that have a lot of money to marketing and things like that. So yeah, in a way we are really colonized by the United States culturally. So it doesn't affect them to have a film that could, because it simply don't get to people, you know. And so they only use us to villainize, is that a word?
I guess.
To villainize the culture and say, oh, we cannot fund this because they are horrible, but nobody watches. So there is no censorship because he knows there is no reach. So.
Well, now I'm gonna open the questions to the public. And you can either ask in Portuguese, Spanish, or English, of course. Yes. Natalia? Yeah.
Thank you, Gustavo. That was amazing. I have many questions, but maybe I'll just ask two, slightly related. And the first one is if you could talk to us a little bit about sound, because sound is, I think, I felt very important in the film. And besides the kind of musical interlude at one moment, right, this kind of beautiful fantasy, surreal moment, there's a series of moments throughout the film where it seems like there's a kind of sonic cue of something that's going to happen, or that's about to happen, or that's going to turn the narrative somewhere, and it might happen or not. So how you think about sound, and then specifically about this musical moment and the kind of orgiastic end of that musical moment. You know, I kept thinking in the history of Brazilian cinema of that very much discussed and watched scene of Dalva Rocha's Land in Anguish, right, where it's also like this party, this orgy, and about the fact that these two films, which are very different, I'm not saying that there's really probably is that much in common between your film and Rocha's Land in Anguish, but that there is a reflection of politics and bodies and who has access to and who's represented. So maybe related, but...
Okay. The sound. It's funny because to me it's a difficult part. I love films that really deal with sound. I had classes with Lucrecia Martel, which is a director who, since the script, she's capable of having like these really concrete ideas of what she wants with sound. To me, that's something I'm learning with the experience of doing films. It's not that easy for me to because I think it's just like another world, and it's really hard to know to put in words what you want. But I always wanted the film to have like this 70s vibe somehow, so I really was inspired by oh my God, I forgot her name. The transgender musician that made the soundtracks for Kubrick's film. Yeah. And I really wanted that vibe, and then we decided to go to this classical music, Brazilian composers' music, and do it as if like with synthesizers, and so in that way it's also like an archive to those old music, classical music, that we are bringing back and changing it. And I wanted the film to have like this childlike vibe, kind of naive vibe, and that I felt watching some films from the 70s also. And about the scene, I mean, we composed those songs also, which are sang inside the shop, and I composed with two friends that are filmmakers, and the idea was like to make it more documentary possible, so we didn't dub it. It was all shot there with live, you know. I wanted that feeling also to be like inside this kind of dream, but yet it's real. You know, the people are singing for real, and it's being. So I think the film is always like trying to be like in between worlds. I want it to be kind of theatrical in a way, but not really. I want it to be like dreamy, but not really. Fiction, but not really. Also, like the outsides, there is always like this surrounding that is like for real. We maybe go. Some of those people can sue us if they want, because we paid nothing to them and they are having their images used, because we didn't have a budget to like stop a street and bring people to. So yeah, I didn't know exactly where all the time. I didn't know all the time where I wanted to go, but I know I wanted to go somewhere in between worlds. And the orgies scene, yeah, it's funny, someone told me that the scene had something with Glauber Rocha. They didn't specify any film, but also the scene with Inês Brasil, which when she comes out from the money. Inês Brasil is like an icon. She's like a meme, and I love her, and I just wanted to have her in the film, and I think she brings also that Glauber's vibe in her acting, like spinning and yeah. I don't know if I answered you again, but
yeah, that's something I would like to add to sound. It's like. Also, this sort of like process of pneuma. Is that how it's called in English? Like this sound of like breathing, like la respiración. So I think it's also like a sort of leitmotif all over the film. At least to me, it was a connection with the experience of the pandemic, and also this idea of like even connected to ecology, right? In the sense of like we have to save the planet, we have to save our life, and we have to keep like living, keep like breathing. So, from the point of view of sound, I think that's something very, at least in my viewer experience, I felt that together with music, of course. And yeah.
It's funny when you said that. I think also that's kind of in betweens, you know, because it's kind of. It has the message like let's save the world, but at the same time it's kind of ironic, because they are like enjoying life in that horrible river full of dirt. And also the film, I think it's also in between comedy. It's like it's comical, but it's really sad in a way also. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's a comedy. More questions? Yeah.
Speaking of influences, were there any specific films or filmmakers that really inspired you in making movies?
Yeah. Before the pandemic, like a year before, me and the three main actors, we started like meeting each other on Zoom before the pandemic, because they are in different states, and we started watching films together and debate the films. Sometimes they would bring films that not necessarily had anything to do with this film, and that's how we started like having this first contact. I started having this first contact with the actors, and it lasted like 1 year. I'm just making a small parenthesis before answering your question. And then it came the pandemic, and then we started like rehearsing through internet without knowing when we would do the film. But yeah, for this film, as I said, I wanted something really specific, but that is like a feeling of this naive feeling that some films give me. So it wasn't about an aesthetic. I had 4 films that I was like, I wanted this film to feel like those films, and they are really different between each other, but they give me the same kind of feeling. And those films are 2 Japanese films, one called House, and the other called Tampopo, which like are films that make me feel really happy and sad at the same time, and make me have fun and think about lots of things. The other one is Harold and Maude, that I love. And the 4th one is a Brazilian film called A Dança dos Bonecos, which is like the dance of the dolls, that I watched a lot when I was a child.
Any other question? Well, thank you so much for being here with us. Also, if you want to get chatting, we have to finish right now, but then we can chat a little bit outside if it's possible. Thanks to Clara for making this event possible, and thank you all for being here with us.
Thank you.